All right, good morning. Can you hear me? Welcome to week 2, semester 2, week 2 of advanced algebra. Okay. Testing. Can you guys hear me? If you guys can hear me, thank you. Say yes or say hi to me so that I know you're here and you can hear me. Thank you, guys. Okay. Let's talk about week 2 review session packet. Okay, factoring, this is review. You absolutely need to know how to factor these 4 types. Okay, so let's do so many chords. Okay, let's do number 1. First of all, oh, and just a reminder that you can receive extra credit for joining me in the session. All I ask is that, no, hello. Can you guys still hear me? Testing. Are you there? I kind of messed up my microphone. Okay, good. Thank you. I have this cord that I'm wrestling with. If I disappear, then say something in the chat because this cord is precarious. And if I touch it, I think it disconnects my microphone. Okay, so you absolutely this is making a great recording, Yeti. Okay, it's going through my mic. Okay, I'm gonna move it over here. Then hopefully this will be better. Okay, sorry, which means nothing to you guys because you're not seeing me. I'll say hi. Hi. Okay, but if I touch this cord, then I think it's disconnecting. So anyway, I'm talking to myself because you guys can't even see like all these cords I'm surrounded by. Okay, welcome to week 2. Now, factoring. You absolutely need to know how to factor these 4 problems. Okay, it is review. We're going to come back to these at the end, but you absolutely need to know how to factor these 4 problems. We're going to go on to number 5, sketch the graph of the function. So there's 2 ways to sketch it. One is the vertex method. And one is the x-intercept method. Okay, so the vertex method is we can find the x coordinate of the vertex with what formula? Can anyone tell me the formula for the x coordinate of the vertex? Super important formula. X is equal to negative, anyone think of it? Negative b over 2a. That will give me the x coordinate of the vertex. And I know that a is 1 and b is negative 6. Okay, so everyone plug in, please, to the negative b over 2a formula for finding the x coordinate of the vertex and tell me what you get for x. Yeah, so we're going to have negative of negative 6 is 6 divided by 2 times positive 1. Did you guys get 3? Yeah, for the x coordinate of the vertex. So 3 the next step is what in graphing this parabola? Plug it in to get the y. Yeah, so we have 3 squared minus 6 times 3 plus 8. Plug that into your calculator and you should get -1. So that's the y coordinate. Okay, so 3, -1 is the vertex. Now in my table, I'm going to have 3 coordinates in my table. Okay, so I'm going to put the vertex in the middle. And I'm going to go 1 to the left and 1 to the right. So now I'm going to plug those x values into my equation. And after I did that, I got 0 and 0. So there is a quick sketch using the vertex method. But what if I wanted to use the x-intercept method? If I have the x-intercept, I know that the y value is 0. So I want to know what x values would give me a y value of 0. So my next step would be to do what? To solve this equation. I'm going to factor, split, and solve. Good morning. Okay. There's calculators right there. Oh, I haven't turned this on yet. Okay, so 1 through 4, we're going to do at the end. And we're on number 5. And I have something going on here. Okay, so factor, split, and solve. To factor, I'm going to make a diamond. I need 2 numbers that multiply to get +8 and add to get -6. So I can check my chart of factors. What are those numbers? Multiply to get +8 and add to get -6. All right, so we're going to say -4 and -2, correct? Because when you multiply, those negatives cancel. There we go. Thank you. When you add, same sign, sun. So factor x -4 and x -2. Now we're going to split. X -4 must be 0. X -2 must be 0. We're going to solve those 2 equations. So when y equals 0, x could be +4. When y equals 0, x could be +2. Okay, so look, this one is right there. Yeah, we have the same, it's agreeing with the vertex method. Yeah. So using the x-intercept method, if I do that in red, I would factor, split, and solve, and I would get these. Now, if the x, let's pretend like we didn't know the vertex. If the x-intercepts were 2 and 4, what do we know about the vertex? Where is it going to be in relationship? So let's pretend we didn't already do this. If I know the x-intercepts are 2 and 4, then where must the vertex be in relationship to the 2 x-intercepts? in the middle of the x-intercepts? Yeah. So the vertex, the x-coordinate of the vertex must be 3 if I was using this method. I already know it because I did the vertex method. And then I would plug that in and I would get y is -1. So I want you to see that there are 2 ways to graph this equation. I missed down there. Let me try again. My hand is a little cramped. Okay, so you could graph, there we go, in the middle, thank you. We graph this using the x-intercept method or the vertex method. You should understand both methods and they will both give you the same graph. Okay, or you might need to demonstrate the different methods that you could use. Okay, number 6. First thing I'm going to do is, well, okay, I'm going to tell you. If you tried to factor it, this was not factorable. Okay, I could explain how I know it's not factorable. So if it's not factorable, we're going to go straight to the vertex method. I would need to factor it to use the x-intercept method. Okay, so we are only going to do the vertex method. Okay, what is the formula to tell us the x-coordinate of the vertex? All right, Zoomers, anyone? -b over 2a. So plug that in. A is 2, B is 12. And what do we get for the x-coordinate of the vertex? So we have -12 divided by 4. It is -3, right? -3. Using the vertex method, we make a table. Of 3 values, and -3 is going to go in the middle. So I have the x-coordinate of the vertex. What's my next step? Okay, so we're going to plug it in. 2 times -3 squared plus 12 times -3 plus 22. Plug it in, and what do you get? 2 times +9 plus -36 plus 22. All right, you should get 4. Notice real quick, -3 squared, we do exponents before we multiply. -3 times -3 is +9. Okay, so -3, 4. Yeah, -3, 4. Okay, so what values are going to go into the table? We went to the left and to the right of -3. So I'm going to go -4 and -2. Okay, I'm going to plug those in. And I'm going to tell you, when I plug in -4, I get 6. And when I plug in -2, I get 6. Which is very interesting because when A equals 2, this distance right here shows up as 2. Okay, from the vertex, the height to the point immediately to the left, immediately to the right. Notice this was 2, which agrees with the fact that A equals 2. Okay, so that's it for number 6. Kind of weird. Don't know exactly what is going on here. I really hope my computer is thinking. Okay, we're going to start number 7. This is freezing. Okay. Number 7. Solve by factoring. Step 1. Oh, look, I can write, but I can't move it. I cannot. Okay. So it's not about Zoom. It's about my OneNote. Okay, so we are going to go to this. Okay, number 7. This is not ideal, but we're just going to do this. Okay, so we are solving. So we are going to factor, split, and solve. But there's actually so this is 1, 2, 3. There's actually a 0 step, which is make sure it is in order. Okay, so in order to solve this quadratic, you need to move everything over so that it's equal to 0. So move everything to the left so that we have equals 0 on the right. So I'm going to add 7n, and I'm going to add 10. N squared plus 7n plus 10, and everything is gone on the right equals 0. Next step is factor. This is easy diamond. So Zoomers, 2 numbers that multiply to get 10 and add to get 7. Yeah. All right, so we have 5 and 2. Thank you. Factor, we put it in order. We factored. Thank you. Split. I now have 2 equations. n plus 5, we want to set to be 0, and n plus 2 equal to 0. So n equals -5 and -2, right? Subtract 5 from both sides, subtract 2 from both sides. And something is wrong with OneNote. Okay, so I'm gonna have to, when I use the whiteboard, just erase everything. Clear. And they changed it. Clear. Okay, number 8. So there is a method called solve by completing the square. Yeah, did you see this in notes? Okay. So I'm going to get rid of this 8. That's just the problem number. Okay, solve by completing the square. And we're going to see why this works. We're going to talk about why it works a little later. But here are the steps. I want a perfect square binomial. So the k goes here. Yeah, and if you've seen the notes, the next step is take your middle term and divide by 2. So that is 10, not the k, just the 10. Okay, now if we were to expand this, okay, we would write it like this, right? And we would make a box. Okay, so if I were to FOIL this out, this would be k squared plus 20k, and then 10 times 10 is 100. So here's the steps. This is the y. Here's the steps. Step 1, take 20k and divide it by 2. Step 2, take 10 squared and subtract, and add to the other side. If I were to expand this, the 100 would be there. So in order to keep things even, we add it to the other side. That would be 93. Okay, now there's a possibility you're going to hate this method, but you need to have seen it. Okay, if you go to college, you take college algebra, you take math analysis, it's important that you've seen this method, even if you don't like it and you choose to use the other methods. So now we're going to solve. So I'm going to add 17 to both sides. And I'm going to get 110. So what we're doing here is we're isolating my squared term. Okay, so to isolate the variable, we're going to take the square root of both sides. Now, if something squared is equal to a number, when I take the square root, it's going to be the plus or minus. Okay, we could talk about why that works, but the square root cancels the squared. Plus or minus square root 110. And then we're going to subtract 10. Negative 10 plus or minus the square root of 110. Two answers. Because whenever I have a squared number, I'm going to get two answers unless it's the duplicate number. Okay, so this is called solving by completing the square. Oops. Solving by completing the square. And OneNote still not working. It's frozen. Yay, okay. Back to OneNote. No. Okay. Okay, sorry. Back to whiteboard. Okay, so that was solving by completing the square. Number 9. Solve by taking square roots. Now notice we have no middle term. Yeah, we do not have a V term. So we're going to use this method called solve by taking square roots. So we're going to isolate, we're going to add 4 to both sides. We're going to divide by 8. Now, if this was V squared equals positive 25, if we had that, then it'd be easy. We would take the square root of both sides and we would get plus or minus 5. Okay, because 5 times 5 is 25 and negative 5 times negative 5 is 25. But this is a little more complicated. So we have V squared is negative 8. I'm going to take the square root So I have -1. I'm going to pull that aside. Now, square root of 8. I want the biggest perfect square and the leftovers. So 8 is 4 times 2. The biggest perfect square is 4. The leftovers is 2.
And then the answer is 2.
Okay. So I have the -1, the 4, and the 2. So
That was I.
uh-huh.
Yeah, okay, I remember.
This is why we're gonna need the I. So hopefully if you've seen in the notes, that's gonna tell us what to do with that square root of -1. So the square root of 4 is 2. The square root of 2 we can't simplify, but what are we gonna do with the square root of -1? In junior high, you are told that you can't take the square root of a negative number. If you take the square root of a negative number, it is complex or imaginary. I don't know how to spell. A-R-Y-E-R-Y.
The Y.
Imaginary. Okay. I have a learning disability with spelling. Okay, so by definition, the square root of -1 is I. Okay, for the imaginary number. So in place of the square root of 21, I mean, where did that come from? In place of the square root of -1, we put I. So V is plus or minus 2I square root 2. And still not working. Okay, so let's clear this. This is not on your paper. Let's do another one real quick. If x squared is -25, you could tell I like 25 as a perfect square. How do I solve this equation? Okay, step 1, square root both sides. So x is plus or minus. So I'm going to separate -1 and 25.
Also, every time the number is negative, you put negative.
Yeah. So plus or minus, the square root of 25 is 5. The square root of square root of -1 is by definition I.
Oh, so that's it.
Yeah. Okay, what about this one? If x squared is equal to -49, what is x equal to?
7I plus minus.
Plus or minus 7I. Yeah, Zoomers? Imaginary numbers. Okay, I am erasing this. So, quadratic formula, number 10. N squared plus 3n plus 2 is equal to 0. Now, most of the time, if I give you a problem, you can use whatever method looks the easiest. But sometimes with quadratic formula, I am going to say, use quadratic formula to solve. So I need you to use the quadratic formula, which is the x, solving for x. In this case, it's n. N is equal to plus or minus, oh, sorry. N is equal to negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay, so n is equal to negative what? So a equals 1, b equals 3. So negative 3 plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a. Now, of all the methods I've showed you, this one looks the most confusing at the beginning, but once you practice it, a lot of students are like, forget completing the square. If I can't factor it, I'm using quadratic formula. Okay, so this looks intimidating right now. It's not bad. Okay, with practice, you're gonna get the hang of this. So where do I start? Next, you simplify the square root. Okay, so with your calculator, what is 3 squared minus 4 times 2 is 8, right? What is 3 squared minus 8?
One.
1. Okay, so n is equal to negative 3 plus or minus the square root of 1 all over 2. Okay, scratch paper. What is, no, wait, hopefully you can hear me. What is the square root of 1?
One.
1. Yeah, so this becomes negative 3 plus or minus 1 over 2. Okay, so now I need 2 answers. N equals negative 3 plus 1 over 2. And what do you think my other one's going to be?
N equals negative 3 minus 1.
All right, so we're going to do the minus. Negative 3 minus 1 over 2. Simplify, do the top first. Negative 3 plus 1, hit enter, then divided by 2. So n is equal to negative 1 and negative 2. Now, you could have solved this by factoring. The fact that we got 2 integers means we could have solved this by factoring. But if I give you one that can't be solved, that can't be factored, then we get square roots and it gets more complicated. So there will be problems where I give you one where you can factor, but I say solve by quadratic formula. Okay, I'm gonna erase. Still no OneNote. And okay, number 11, we're gonna do it again. So step one, number 11, move everything, add 6 to both sides, subtract 10x from both sides. So we're gonna get minus 10x plus 6 equals 0. Now, this one's harder, I'll just admit. Now, if we tried to factor it, we would find that we cannot factor it. Okay, so quadratic formula, x equals negative b plus or minus the square root. I hate this whiteboard. Anyway, x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay, so let's plug it into the formula. So plug it in and then check your work with mine. Negative of negative 10 is positive 10, right? Okay, check your work with mine. Do we agree? Next step. This is called the discriminant, by the way. Simplify that, please. Okay, so in my scratch paper, negative 10 times negative 10 is positive 100. Minus, oh, I can't do that. Yeah, do we see why that's positive 100? Which is 100 minus 216. Which is negative 116. Okay, you with me so far? This one's long, it has a lot of steps. Okay, negative 116 is negative 1. So we have 1 times 116, 2 times 58, 4 times 29. Oh, that's it. Okay, those are the factors of 116. It's too big for the chart of factors. I had to make my own list. What is the biggest perfect square and the leftovers? Okay, so I have negative 1. The biggest perfect square is 4. The leftovers, correct, is 29. Okay, so this is 2, right? I'm gonna put that first. What about this one? Square root of -1 is I. The leftovers, square root of 29. Okay, now I know this seems like the problem that just never ends. But look at this. Outside, outside, and outside. We are going to GCF factor a 2 out. And then we're going to cancel and then we're going to be done. Okay, so quadratic formula. If the inside, which is called the discriminant, has a negative number and it's not a perfect square, it can be a little tricky. Now, once you get to this part, if you don't like the GCF, you can reduce it this way. 10 over 18 plus or minus 2i square root 29 over 18, which is 5 over 9 plus or minus, reduce outside with outside. Okay, so here are the 2 possible answers. Notice this is a common denominator. So that's how we go from, so I would accept either. Okay, a lot of steps. With practice, this is not bad. It just looks a little overwhelming. The first example. Okay. Clear. Number 12. Okay, so let's talk about I. First of all, before we do number 12, in the notes, hopefully, that's not an I. Hopefully, you did the notes yesterday. Oh, today. Yeah, our week is messed up because we don't have a Monday. So if you do the notes, if you haven't done them yet, you will see this. Or did I put the notes last Friday?
Oh, no, last Friday.
Last Friday. Okay, hopefully you did the notes last Friday. Because it is good to do the notes before the review session. You will go into the review session more confident. Okay, so we know that, what is I? It is the square root of -1. So in the notes, we know that I equals I. By definition, I squared is the square root of -1 squared. Square root cancels squared. So I squared is -1. Okay. I cubed That's all we're gonna talk about for right now. I cubed is negative I, and I to the fourth is 1. Okay, we can talk about y later, but we need to know this right here. Mostly the top two. Okay, number 12. 1 minus I, no. 1 minus I minus negative 2 plus I. Okay, notice in between is a minus sign. This is not multiply. Okay, so let's distribute the negative. One minus I minus, okay, see how we're going to distribute this negative right here, and it's going to become plus 2 minus I. Okay, now, and when we get to this part, the i's, you treat them like you would a variable. And you just add them together. So we have 1 plus 2 is 3, minus I, minus another I is minus 2I. So this is just combine like terms. So negative I plus another negative I is negative 2I. 13. Negative 1 minus 6I squared. Step 1, split it. It is negative 1 minus 6I times itself. Okay, now notice here they had a minus sign in the middle. Here, empty space. When it's empty space, we multiply. Okay, number 12 is combine like terms. Number 13 is multiply. So multiply, fill in the box, please. Negative 1 times negative 1 is positive 1. Negative 1 times negative 6 is positive 6I, positive 6I, and 36I squared. Now, anytime you see I squared, you need to replace I squared with negative 1. So we have 1 plus 6I plus 6I minus 36. Your answer will not have an I squared in it. So that's negative 35. The i's, you treat them like variables. At this point, we're combining like terms plus 12i. Notice the I squared disappeared. The I did not disappear. Okay, we're gonna try this again. Don't know exactly what's going on. Oh, that's last year's. $14. Notice empty space. Multiply. Four minus 7i, 8 plus 4i. $32, 16i, negative 56i, and what goes here? The last one. Negative 28i squared. Okay, what's the next step? I squared is replaced with -1. So this is 32 plus 16i minus 56i plus 28. Which is 60 minus 40i. Okay. Now, what if we're simplifying a square root, but there's a variable involved? We are going to split this into the biggest perfect square, the leftovers, and the n squared. So 54. 1 times 54, 2 times 27, 3 times 18, 4, no. 6 times 9. Yeah, there's your biggest perfect square. So I have this square root of 9 is 3, square root of n squared.
Oh, negative.
Oop, that would be square root of, oops, no. That's square root of negative 1 is I. Square root of n squared is n. A square root cancels a squared. So we have 3n. The leftovers are stuck. Okay. So 96. We look at the chart of factors and we see that 16 is the biggest perfect square. Now, b cubed. We have b squared and our variable has a leftover. So we're going to do the perfect squares first. Square root of 16 is what? 4. Okay, Zoomers, what is the square root of b squared? Thank you. So we have 4b square root 6b. The ones that come out multiply together, the ones that stay in multiply together. $17. Okay, so you're going to see problems like this that are the first 2 steps of completing the square. Step 1 is take the middle term and divide it by 2. So we get x plus 9. Step 2 is take the 9 and square it. And that goes right there. The first 2 steps of completing the square. Okay, we're not going to do this crazy. We're just going to put 20. Step 1, what number goes here? 10. Thank you. Step 2, what number goes there? Yeah. Okay. The first 2 steps of completing the square. Okay, bunny problem. Draw a sketch. So we have a wall and a pen, 3 sides of the wall. These 2 we call X. I have a total of 32 feet of fencing. Here's the hard part. What is that right there? If I have 32 feet and I've used X on the left, X on the right.
It says 4.
It's not a number, it's an expression. This is 32 minus 2x. Because I had 32, I used 2x's, so the expression of what is left is 32 minus 2x's.
Oh, this is the one that we reviewed last time.
Mhm. Yeah. Okay, one of these problems is going to be on your exam, and the thing that keeps changing is the total number, total length of fencing. Okay, so that's the sketch. The area is y is length times width. So x times 32 minus 2x. Which is distribute the x, 32x minus 2x squared. Or negative 2x squared plus 32x. Okay, now we notice that there's a negative in front. This is a sad parabola. It's a parabola that has been flipped. Okay, so what x value will maximize the area? Can we see that the max is going to be the vertex? So how can I find the x coordinate of the vertex? Correct. So B is 32 over 2 times negative 2. Which is cancel 32 divided by 4, which is 8. So what width? A width of 8 will maximize the area. Okay, find the maximum area. If x equals 8 and the area is the y, there's two things you can do. You can either plug that in or plug it in here. If this is 8, that makes this 8. 32 minus 16, that makes this 16. Area is base times height or length times width, which is 128. Okay, this was hard. Review session on Tuesday when Monday was a holiday. Now, number 1, 2, 3, and 4, you absolutely need to know how to factor those expressions. Can you factor those, or do you have any requests? If you can factor these 4 expressions, you're done. Okay, if you want, then I will do these for you as well. Okay, so otherwise, 1, 2, 3, and 4 are on your own, or you can stick around and we'll do them together.
Oh, yes, that's when number 19 on D. If you plug in the 8, it gives you negative 96.
Oh, question. Okay, so y equals -2 times 8 squared plus 32 times 8,
Oh, I can't remember if it's times 8.
which is -2 times 64.
Oh, yeah, I forgot to put 8 on the difference.
Okay, so it works.
Yeah. it works.
So you get 128. But good question. Thank you. Okay, are we done or do we want to see? Can you factor these on your own or should we do them together? Number one,
Yeah,
G, you
greatest common factor.
greatest common factor. You can do that, right?
Yeah, put that one.
Okay, can you guys do number two or do you want to do it together? Together. Okay. Number two, notice there's a GCF. So they all have 4 and they all have R. What do they all have?
Explain
R squared. Yeah, does everyone see where I got the 4R squared? So this is 4 times R, 4 times R, and 2 times 4 times R. So if I were to circle, they all have the 4 and they all have the R squared. Does that help? Okay. So if I take out 4R squared, I have R squared here. I take out 4R squared, I just have R. I take out 4R squared and I just have 2. And if I went, I could put a 1 here. If that helps. Okay, let's see if it can factor using a diamond. Two numbers that multiply to get -2 and add to get -1. -2 times 1. So 4R squared. R minus 2, R plus 1. So GCF and then diamond. So it looked harder until I used GCF to make it into a simpler problem. Okay, number 3. What type of problem is this?
diamond.
What happens if there's a number in front? Okay, I need to do the rainbow, right?
Oh, rainbow.
So you got to multiply those. Rainbow, diamond. Thank you. Rainbow. Okay. I need 2 numbers that multiply to get -30 and add to get 7. All right. +10, -3. Okay, if I do the rainbow, I next mandatory box. So we have 3x squared and -10. I have 2 spots in my box, so the 7x is going to get replaced with 10x and -3x. Now, as I'm factoring, this one looks actually the easiest to start with. GCF factor is 3x. Three x times x, 3x squared. 3x x times 10 is 10x. 3x times -1, and -1 times 10 is -10. So we get, I'm going to put the bigger one first. 3x plus 10 and x minus 1. Okay, so number 4 is just like number 3, rainbow diamond box. Okay, so we are done. I would like you to actually do this on your own. And if you got it, then you can just leave unless you have questions. I'll stick around for questions. If you can't do it, we will do it together, but try this one on your own, starting with the rainbow. We know that we have to do the rainbow because of that 2 right there. Bye-bye. Thank you. Okay. I'm going to get started, but don't look. Keep working. Okay, how we doing? How we doing, Zoomers? Do we get it?
Even for the negatives, now you put negative sense.
So -16 and -3? Yeah? Okay, let's do the box. 2b squared and 24. -16b and -3b. Are we good to this point? Yeah? GCF factor would be 2b. And b and -8 and -3. And -3 times -8 is +24. 2b minus 3, b minus 8. Okay, that is it. Any questions? Got it? Okay, thanks for coming. Bye-bye. Have a good week.
I remember some of them from the notes, but I was forgetting because we did them on Friday.